In just 38 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved actors completely lost his patience, raised his voice at a talk show host, and walked off set in absolute fury. What started as a conversation about theater and acceptance spiraled into a full-blown shouting match that left the studio audience gasping and crew members scrambling. This is the story of how Denise Welch pushed Ian McKellen too far. The atmosphere in the studio felt charged from the moment Ian McKellen walked onto the set. The legendary actor, known for his powerful performances and his decades of activism for equality, settled into his chair with that familiar, warm smile. The audience applauded enthusiastically. He'd come to talk about his latest theater project and his lifelong work supporting young performers. But Denise Welch had other plans. The conversation began pleasantly enough. Ian talked about his upcoming role, his love for the stage, and the importance of arts education. He spoke with passion about giving opportunities to young people from all backgrounds. The other panelists nodded along, asking thoughtful questions. But Denise kept glancing at her notes, a strange smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Something was brewing. "So Ian," Denise interrupted, her voice taking on a sharper edge, "you've been very vocal about certain issues over the years. Very political, some might say." Ian's expression shifted slightly. He'd been in this business long enough to recognize when someone was setting a trap. "I've spoken up for what I believe in, yes. I think it's important to use whatever platform you have for good." Right, Denise continued, leaning forward. "But don't you think sometimes celebrities should just stick to entertaining? I mean, do people really want to hear actors telling them how to think?" The studio went quiet. The other panelists exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the direction anyone expected the conversation to go. Ian remained composed, though his jaw tightened. "I think people are intelligent enough to hear different viewpoints and make up their own minds. Speaking about human rights isn't telling people how to think. It's standing up for basic decency." "But that's just it," Denise pressed on, her voice rising. "Who decides what's decent? You've been very outspoken about inclusivity and all that. But what about people who have different opinions? Are they not allowed to speak anymore?" Ian straightened in his chair. "Different opinions about what, exactly? About whether people deserve equal rights? That's not really a matter of opinion, is it?" The tension was building rapidly. You could feel it spreading through the studio like wildfire. The audience members sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or stay silent. Denise let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This moral superiority. Just because someone doesn't agree with every single thing you believe doesn't make them a bad person." "I never said it did," Ian replied, his voice still measured but growing firmer. "But there's a difference between having an opinion and denying people their fundamental humanity. I've spent my entire adult life fighting for people to simply exist without persecution. That's not politics. That's human rights." One of the other panelists tried to jump in, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Denise wasn't having it. "Oh, here we go with the lecture," Denise said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "This is what gets me about your type. You think you're so enlightened, so progressive, but the moment anyone questions you, they're labeled a bigot, or worse." Ian's eyes flashed. His legendary composure was beginning to crack. "My type? What exactly does that mean?" "You know what I mean," Denise shot back. "The virtue-signaling crowd, always on your high horse, telling everyone else they're wrong." The studio had gone completely silent now. Even the crew had stopped moving. Everyone could sense this was spiraling out of control. Ian took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his dignity. "I came here today to talk about theater and young people pursuing their dreams. I'm not sure why you're trying to turn this into some kind of political ambush." "I'm not ambushing anyone," Denise snapped. "I'm asking legitimate questions. Or are we not allowed to challenge the great Ian McKellen?" "Challenge me about what?" Ian's voice was rising now, the frustration finally breaking through. "Challenge me about believing people shouldn't be discriminated against? About thinking young people deserve support regardless of who they are? What exactly are you challenging?" Denise leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "I'm challenging this idea that there's only one acceptable way to think about these issues. Some of us believe in free speech, even when it makes people uncomfortable." Ian's face had gone red. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "Free speech? You want to talk about free speech? I fought for free speech when it was actually dangerous to do so. When speaking up could cost you your career, your safety, your life. Don't lecture me about free speech while you're sitting here attacking me for using mine." The audience began to murmur. Some people looked angry, others confused. The other panelists were trying desperately to interject, but both Denise and Ian ignored them. "I'm not attacking you," Denise said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm simply saying that not everyone has to agree with your worldview. And frankly, some of us are tired of being told we're terrible people if we don't fall in line." Ian stood up slightly in his chair, his voice booming now. "Fall in line with what? With basic human decency? With treating people with respect? If that's what you're tired of, then perhaps you should examine why that bothers you so much." The studio erupted in scattered applause, but Denise's face had gone dark. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare you come on this show and imply that I'm some kind of bigot because I believe in balanced discussion?" "Balanced discussion?" Ian's voice was incredulous now. "You call this balanced? You've done nothing but antagonize me from the moment you brought this up. There's nothing balanced about trying to create controversy for ratings." Denise shot up from her seat. "Ratings? You think I need to create controversy? You're the one getting all worked up, throwing accusations around. Maybe you're not used to people actually pushing back on your opinions." "My opinions?" Ian was standing now too, both of them on their feet, voices raised. "I'm talking about people's lives. Real people who face discrimination every single day. This isn't some abstract debate for me or for them. These are real lives, real struggles, real pain." "Oh, spare me the melodrama," Denise spat. "Everything is life and death with you people. Can't we have a conversation without all the emotional manipulation?" Ian's face went from red to almost purple. His hands were shaking. "Emotional manipulation? I'm talking about young people who've been bullied, who've been rejected by their families, who've taken their own lives because they didn't feel accepted. And you're calling that melodrama? I'm calling it using tragedy to shut down debate," Denise fired back. "You can't just throw out worst-case scenarios every time someone questions your politics." The other panelists were trying to speak now, practically shouting to be heard over the argument, but it was useless. This had become a two-person showdown, and neither was backing down. "This isn't about politics," Ian roared. "Why do you keep calling it politics? Wanting people to be treated with dignity isn't a political stance, it's basic morality. And if you can't understand that, then I genuinely pity you." "Don't you dare pity me." Denise's voice was venomous now. "I don't need pity from some actor who thinks his opinions are worth more than everyone else's just because he's famous." Ian took a step back, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You invited me here. You asked me to come on your show, and now you're attacking me for being famous? What is this really about, Denise? Because it clearly has nothing to do with anything I've actually said. It's about you acting like you're better than everyone else," Denise shouted. "Like your way of thinking is the only acceptable way. Some of us believe in nuance. Some of us don't think every issue is black and white." "Nuance?" Ian's voice was sharp as glass. "There's no nuance in discrimination. There's no gray area in treating people with respect. You can dress it up in whatever language you want, but at the end of the day, you're either on the side of equality or you're not." The audience was completely divided now. Some people were cheering, others were booing, and the noise level in the studio had reached a fever pitch. The producers were frantically signaling to go to commercial, but Denise waved them off. "That's exactly what I'm talking about." Denise pointed her finger at Ian. "That right there. You're either with us or against us. That's not how the real world works. That's not how adults have conversations." Ian laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Adults? You want to talk about adult conversations? Adults don't invite guests onto their show just to ambush them. Adults don't pretend to ask questions when they're really just looking for a fight." "I'm not the one shouting," Denise said, though she was absolutely shouting. "Neither was I, until you started attacking everything I stand for." Ian shot back. "I came here in good faith. I thought we were going to have a pleasant conversation about theater and supporting young people. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of inquisition." Denise crossed her arms again, a sneer on her face. "Maybe if you can't handle a few challenging questions, you shouldn't be doing interviews." That was it. That was the moment Ian McKellen had enough. His entire body went rigid. He stared at Denise for a long moment, his expression shifting from anger to something else entirely. Disappointment, disgust. He reached up and unclipped his microphone with shaking hands. Challenging questions? His voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more powerful than when he'd been shouting. You haven't asked me a single genuine question this entire time. You've just been baiting me, trying to get a reaction. Well, congratulations, you got one. He dropped the microphone onto his chair. I've been doing this for over 60 years, Ian continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I've been interviewed thousands of times. I've faced actual hostile journalists, real critics who challenged me with intelligence and respect. But this is just sad. Denise opened her mouth to respond, but Ian held up his hand. No, I'm done. I don't know what you thought you were going to accomplish here today, but whatever it was, I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth attacking a guest who came here to talk about giving opportunities to young people. I hope it was worth trying to create division and controversy out of thin air. The other panelists were silent now, watching this unfold with wide eyes. You know what the real shame is? Ian said, his voice breaking slightly. There are young people watching this right now. Young people who might have been inspired by a conversation about theater and following their dreams. Instead, they got to watch you try to tear someone down for standing up for equality. What kind of message does that send? Denise's face had gone pale, but her jaw was still set stubbornly. Oh, don't try to make this about the children. This is about you not being able to handle criticism. Ian shook his head slowly. No, Denise. This is about you using your platform to spread negativity instead of doing something good with it. And I won't be part of it. He turned to the audience. I apologize to all of you who came here expecting something better than this. You deserved better. Then he looked at the other panelists. And I apologize to you as well. I know this isn't what you wanted either. Finally, he turned back to Denise one last time. As for you, I truly hope you think about what happened here today. I hope you think about why you felt the need to attack a guest instead of having a real conversation. And I hope you realize that creating conflict for entertainment isn't worth sacrificing your integrity. My integrity? Denise sputtered. You're the one storming off like a child. Ian smiled sadly. No, I'm leaving like an adult who knows better than to waste time with someone who isn't interested in a genuine exchange. There's a difference. He began to walk off the set. The studio was in complete chaos now. Audience members were shouting, some at Denise, some at Ian. The other panelists were trying to restore order. The crew didn't know whether to follow Ian with the cameras or stay on the panel. Fine. Leave, Denise yelled after him. Run away when things get tough. Ian stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back one final time. His face was composed now, though his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I've faced down far tougher things than you could ever imagine, he said quietly, but his voice carried across the entire studio. I came out publicly in 1988, when it could have destroyed my career. I've fought for decades against actual oppression, not manufactured controversy. I've held the hands of friends as they died during the AIDS crisis, so don't you dare accuse me of running away when things get tough. His voice cracked on the last word. What I'm doing is refusing to participate in whatever this is. There's a difference between a tough conversation and being deliberately antagonistic. And I'm too old and too tired to pretend otherwise. With that, he turned and walked off the stage. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the sudden silence that fell over the studio. No music played. No one applauded. Everyone just sat there, stunned by what they'd witnessed. Denise stood frozen at the desk, her face unreadable. The other panelists looked at each other helplessly. The audience didn't know whether to cheer or boo or just sit quietly. One of the producers finally signaled to cut to commercial, and the lights dimmed slightly, but the damage was done. In just under an hour, what should have been a pleasant interview about theater and young people had turned into one of the most explosive confrontations in talk show history. As the crew scrambled to figure out how to fill the rest of the show's time, and as audience members began talking frantically among themselves, one thing was crystal clear. This was a moment that would be replayed and discussed for years to come. Not because of what was said about politics or rights or beliefs, but because it showed what happens when someone more interested in creating drama than meaningful dialogue pushes a genuinely good person too far. Ian McKellen had entered that studio as a respected guest, ready to share his passion and experience. He left as a man who'd been pushed to his absolute limit by someone who seemed more interested in point scoring than actual conversation. And, in those final moments, as he walked away with his dignity intact, he'd shown more grace and strength than Denise had displayed during the entire confrontation. The cameras may have stopped rolling, but the impact of what happened would continue long after the studio lights went dark.